Hi, Roman. This is Danko.
Hi,
How are
Danko.
you?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you
How are
for
you
joining
doing?
in the Beyond Agile Israel 2021. And we are about to talk about product owner or product ownership. Okay. So let's start with the first question that bothers me the most. What is going on about eliminating the role product owner and talking about accountabilities? Do you have any idea what is in the new Scrum Guide? I mean,
So the new Scrum Guide still has the product owner role in it, right?
well, not the new one. The new one has we vanished the role, and now we have a product owner, but it's like the accountability as a product owner. It's a one person. However, no role. Do you have any idea what does it mean?
Well, I think the intention was to strengthen more the collaborative aspect, the teamwork between the individual who takes on product ownership, the people who looks after the process and helps with organizational change and acts as the Scrum Master, and the people who design, develop, test, architect the product and do everything else that's needed so that demonstrable product increments are available and ultimately a product can be released. But I may well be biased. I think that generally speaking, it helps to have somebody who knows about product management, knows about product management practices in an agile Scrum-based setting, and who can take charge of the product, who can own the product, manage the product, and it works with the developers, formerly known as the development team, but maybe also interacts with the stakeholders and not only manages the product backlog and thinks about the sprint goal that we're working towards, but maybe also takes good care of product discovery and product strategy. So what I'm trying to say, there's more to product management and product ownership than running sprints.
Totally agree with you. And I think that this is exactly the intention, to have a responsibility as a Scrum team. And PO is one of the accountability. Although I found it that the PO can delegate it to more people. But we'll soon find out what is it. So what is your view on the role of the product owner? Do you think it is a role that fits all? Do you think that maybe there are levels? Can you elaborate about it a little bit?
Sure, yes. Yeah, I think it's a role that's still often misunderstood and not always effectively applied. And one of the things I find is that there's a lot of confusion about what it means to own a product. And so maybe it's helpful to reflect a little bit on the history of the term. As far as I know, when Ken Schwaber coined the Scrum terms in the late 90s, he originally chose. Sorry?
You know, the Cohen is a famous last name in Hebrew. But I asked him, because he's not a Cohen like in Hebrew. But just
there you go. Shows you I unfortunately don't speak any Hebrew whatsoever. So anyway, originally the product owner was called product manager. And then Ken Schwaber changed it to product owner, partly to indicate the level of ownership you need. But I've got actually a slide that I could share with you, if I can only find it now. Oh no, that's, well, actually, it's not quite what I wanted to share, but it's not that bad either. So, for me, understanding the product owner role starts with understanding what is a product. And I know the new Scrum Guide for the first time defines what a product is, but until very recently, Scrum never really made explicit what is meant by a product. But there's been a product owner forever, there's been a product backlog forever, there's been a product increment forever. So, lots of product terminology. So for me, a product is an asset that creates value for a group of people, users, and possibly customers. And it has to be a tangible value in the sense that a specific benefit is provided or a problem is solved, so that people have a real reason to use the product. And then at the same time, the product has to generate value for the business, for the company that develops and offers that product. That might be generating revenue, it might be reducing costs, it might be developing the brand, there might be another business benefit. But again, these benefits, they have to be specific, and I have to be able to clearly call them out. And then a product owner for me is somebody who owns a product in its entirety. So not only on a tactical level, but really has what I refer to as full stack ownership, and is responsible then or accountable, as the new Scrum Guide puts it, for achieving product success or maximizing the value that the product creates. And
I have one question with your permission. This new Scrum Guide refers to a new term which is called product goal. Can you maybe refer to it or explain a bit or elaborate?
Yes, more than happy to do so. Before I follow up on the product goal, let me just quickly finish the thought about different levels and types of product owners, if that's okay. So, you know, when I talk to people quite often and they introduce themselves as a product owner to me, and, you know, I say, oh, what you do, what kind of role do you play? They say, I'm a product owner. Then quite often I find the individual either owns more or less than a product in the sense that I just suggested, in the sense that I just defined the asset. And so there's the Scrum product owner, and as I suggested, a Scrum product owner should own a product in its entirety. So a revenue generating asset, something that generates value generating asset, something that generates value for a group of people, users in the business. But then, you know, bigger products, you know, it's kind of difficult for one person to manage a big product with lots of features and more user interaction options and more user journeys. And so then it can be very useful to have somebody who takes charge of a feature as an end user facing capability, or maybe a step in a user journey. And I personally like to call the role of the individual feature owner, because here the job is not to own the entire product and be responsible for the product success, but to maximize the value an individual feature creates. It's still a demanding job. It's still an interesting job. I still need to know about the users in the market, but I don't have the same level of responsibility. I'm not responsible for the business goals of the product. And then sometimes it makes sense to have people who own components or architecture subsystems. That could be, for instance, a data access layer that allows the product to speak to data repositories. And I call the individual component owner. So I just find it helpful to distinguish what somebody owns and call that out clearly to avoid confusion. It's happened to me more than once that I was working with an organization, and, you know, I'm in a workshop, in a product owner workshop, and they're like, lots of people, and I say, like, this is great that there's so much interest, but, you know, this is a workshop for the product owners. And people say, like, yeah, sure. And then, you know, it turns out they're sort of product owners, but they're not. Most of them are actually feature or component owners, but everybody's called a product owner. And so there's a lot of confusion about what it then means to be a product owner. So I think it's better then to differentiate. And there's a little bit more to it. There's, of course, the safe product owner. And I mean, personally, I'd say in hindsight, it's maybe a mistake that SAFe chose to call the role product owner. I think it has added to the confusion about what it means to be a product owner. The SAFe product owner, that's my take on it, is more like a tactical role focused on the product backlog and interacting with the teams. Doesn't have that full stack ownership, top to bottom vision, strategy, tactics that a Scrum product owner should have. And then, you know, just to complete this picture, I've added a platform here. So we've got two products, and you may want to extract shared assets into a platform. And then it may make sense to have a platform owner. And platform owner really is a Scrum product owner, but only for an internal supporting technical product. Now we have a little portfolio, and it probably doesn't make sense to do this for 3 products, but if we had more products here in our portfolio, then it probably would make sense to have a product portfolio owner. And so the job of a product portfolio owner is to maximize the value a group of products create, and maybe make prioritization decisions across those products, help manage dependencies, help align roadmaps and release dates, all those good things. So, this is just to kind of tease out different types of product owners and different levels of product ownership, if you want so. And my advice is just be aware of what you actually own. And if you own a feature, that's cool. Then you're probably more like a feature owner. If you own an architecture building block, a component or set of services, or a layer, then maybe you're more like a component owner than a Scrum product owner.
I have several questions, like 1 zillion questions, okay? But I'll start with well, it's very interesting model, and I would definitely like to deep dive into it. The first question that popped into my head is, how do you deal with we call it in Agile or in Scrum, one voice or local maximum, okay? How do you deal when you have the feature owner, for example, that is taking care on his or her feature, while there are maybe another feature owner for another feature, or a component owner, and each and every one of them wants to have the maximum, okay, value for them, but in that case, or in this case, they will create a global minimum, okay?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan, because thank you for asking it. So there's a danger, of course, when we use more specialized roles and when several people have to collaborate and share product ownership, that we sub-optimize. And as you described, that the various feature owners, they optimize their features, but it's not to the benefit of the overall product. The solution is by getting everybody who plays a product role, so that's the overall Scrum product owner, feature owner, and component owner here on this picture, to work together to collaborate. And I would suggest, if that's a setup or model that you consider adopting, that the component and feature owner are involved in the discovery, the product discovery work and product strategy work, maybe not quite to the extent that the Scrum product owner has to, but I think it's important for the feature owners to be able to contribute to strategic product decisions, so that there is a shared understanding, but also so that the individuals buy into the decisions, support the decisions, and see them through. I actually do have a slide that shows how feature and component and overall Scrum product owner can interact. Do you want me to try and find it?
Yeah, let's see it. And in the meantime, let me share with you that one of the things that I had along the years when having the product owner this description is that the product owner that I talk with are quite complaining about the name product owner, that on one hand implies that they own the product, but on the other hand, they have almost slim to none responsibility in respect to budget and stuff like that. So
Right.
if you can relate to that, it will be excellent, because I need to give them answer. And I have a huge technical debt along the years.
Cool, I'll try to do that. But as you could just see, it's not contained in the slide deck, so apologies. But yeah, I mean, I've written about sort of the idea of feature owner, component, and Scrum product owner collaborating in blog posts. So maybe for some people who are watching and listening, maybe something to refer to. Now, I think for a commercial revenue generating product, it can be very useful. It generally is useful, and I'd say advisable, that the Scrum product owner does have budget ownership and at the same time responsibility. The product owner was always considered to be the person who's empowered and respected to make decisions. I mean, when you think about this, empowerment's always been an issue in product management, and it still is a big issue. I mean, many product people, no matter if they're called product manager or product owner or product XYZ, many product people don't have the right level of empowerment. But in an Agile Scrum-based context, this is especially important, because in Agile, collaboration obviously is valued very much. So on a regular basis, routinely, developers or development team members, depending on which term you prefer, and stakeholders contribute to product decisions. Think of a sprint review meeting. And you have like 7, 8, 9 developers plus product owner plus scrum master plus some stakeholders in the sprint review meeting, maybe occasionally users and customers. And so, you know, these are people who have different perspectives, maybe different needs and different backgrounds. And so you sometimes get friction and disagreement, and that's natural. And so if no disagreement, sorry, if no agreement, if no consensus can be achieved, then the Scrum product owner needs to be empowered to make the right decision and allow the product to move forward. And if an individual has that level of empowerment, I think it's only then fair to say, well, you should then also be responsible for the success. But if it is, again, a revenue generating product, certainly, then it makes a lot of sense to give the Scrum product owner a budget to work with, say for the next 6 to 12 months. And that might be based on a product roadmap rather than the product backlog. And this is, by the way, where your product goals might fit in, or the question about product goals.
Excellent. Good. And who do you think the best person, and what is the right timing for define the product goal? You mentioned it.
Cool. I'll try and see if I can share another slide about product goals. So,
well, these are the hot topics right now. Maybe not the most important, the hot topics. And if you want one more thing to add to the pile of questions that I'm getting, is in the new Scrum Guide, there is a nice phrase that says that people need to convince the product owner when they want to change something. And it sounds a little bit, how to say, bizarre, or not to say related to science fiction, that, let's say, for example, the CEO will convince the PO to do something. Usually, if the CEO, and I'm exaggerating purposely, on purpose, if the CEO wants something, he just force the PO, as it sounds, to do it. So,
yeah, for me, yeah, I mean, you're right.
How to deal with it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for me, that again suggests that, you know, the Scrum Guide really, and the Scrum founders want the product owner role really to be positioned as somebody who has the respect of the decision makers in the organization and is sufficiently empowered and recognize that that's a real issue, that many product owners don't have the level of empowerment they really need in order to do a great job. And I don't think that's beneficial for the individuals, and I don't think it's beneficial for the organization in the long term. Again, this is not meant to mean that the product owner should be a strong woman or strong man and be authoritarian or coercive and slam the fist on the table and say it's my way or the highway. I think a good product owner will always try and at least listen to the developers and the stakeholders, and of course, listen to the customers and the users. But a good product owner won't be afraid to make a tough decision if no consensus can be reached within a realistic time frame. And so it's this balance between being very collaborative and having an open mind and actively listening to others and appreciating the ideas and concerns, suggestions and needs of other people. And at the same time, knowing that we can't always please everybody. And if we try and please everyone, what we end up with is a design by committee or a decision by committee. We end up with, you know, what is referred to as a camel, right? A horse designed by committee, a weak compromise, and successful products aren't built on weak compromises. So the point that I'm trying to make is that it's useful to have that level of empowerment so that, you know, you can say, look, guys, ladies and gentlemen, we've debated this, I've carefully listened, we can't seem to be able to agree, therefore I suggest this is what we should do. And then people respect that and people are willing to support this decision. So that's my take on it, but maybe I'm getting the wrong end of the stick, as they say.
Perfectly okay.
So product goals. Product goals. Let me see. I'm sorry. Product goals. Here's just a quick reminder what the Scrum Guide says about product goals. I just put this together in case people don't know. So product goals should describe a future state of the product, long-term objective for the Scrum team. It's in the product backlog. The rest of the product backlog emerges to define what will fulfill the product goal. And the product owner is accountable for developing and explicitly communicating the product goal and the entire Scrum team is always focused on one product goal, right? So when I first read the new Scrum Guide, and particularly the advice around product goals, I was quite excited because I've been working with product goals for quite a while, and so I thought it's great that the Scrum Goal recognizes that product goals can be useful, and it can be useful to have something in addition to the vision. And historically, what we've had in Scrum are a sprint goal and a vision, and the vision isn't clearly defined and isn't really part of the Scrum framework, but I think of the vision as the ultimate purpose of a product, the positive change it should bring about, but also something that is very long-term, 5 to 10 years. And then the sprint goal is the benefit that a sprint should provide, the outcome, right? What we'd like to achieve with a sprint, but it's quite tactical and very short-term, 1 to 4 weeks. And so for years, I struggled to see what is the connection between the vision and the sprint goal. And so for me, the product goal is a key step to get from such a big inspirational vision to a very small tactical sprint goal. So as the Scrum Guide says, it's a future state of the product, or I would say maybe we could also say the desired benefit or outcome the product should create, maybe a specific and measurable outcome. But I think to get to a product goal directly from the vision is hard. So I like to take an intermediate step and identify, based on the vision, appropriate user and business goals for a product, and say, okay, who are the users and what benefit does the product create for those users, or what specific goals does the product help the users achieve? I'll show you some examples in a second to make this a little bit more specific. And so, start with the vision, derive the user and business goals, and use the user and business goals then to discover product goals. User and business goals are valid for a maximum of the product life cycles I'll try again. Are valid for a product life cycle stage. So for a stage in the product life cycle, so that's the maximum life expectancy these goals have. And how long a product lifecycle stage is depends on the product, depends on the market, how dynamic the market is. In product goals, personally, I like to say 2 to 6 months. Some people may disagree, and that's cool. The Scrum Guide doesn't mandate how big or small product goals are, but that's sort of the set of cascading goals that I like to work with. And just to give you some sample goals, so the vision could be to help people eat healthily. Well, that's my vision maybe. And then user and business goals could be to reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, maybe for middle-aged men like myself. And the business goal would be to create a new revenue source, right? And now I can use those user and business goals to think about a specific measurable product goal for the next 2 to 6 months. And that could be help users understand if their eating habits are healthy, help them understand the eating habits, and acquire an initial user base. And that might be then the goal I'd like to achieve with an MVP, a minimum viable product, an initial offering of my new product, if it's a new product I'm providing here. And that product goal, and that's the cool thing for me about product goals, is that that's the basis for identifying sprint goals. And the sprint goal could be, say, of the first sprint to validate that users are willing to share personal information when they're activating the app, such as like weight and age, and any dietary requirements, any allergies they might have, and those things, or eating habits, exercising habits. So these goals, the way I like to apply them is that I derive them systematically. So we've got a visionary goal, we've got strategic goals, and I would say the strategic goals are user and business goals, but also the product goal, and then the sprint goal. But they're it's not only a top-down relationship here, it's a bidirectional one. So if I fail to meet the sprint goals for my new healthy eating product, I have to think about if the product goal is still valid and realistic, and I may have to adjust the product goal. And if I need to adjust my product goal or several product goals in a row, then my user and business goals may no longer be valid or realistic. And if I fail to meet my user and business goals, well, I may have to either adapt my vision or consider, well, looking for a different product and walk away from it. So that's the way I like to play it. And the nice thing again about this is, I know I'm sort of advertising the specific hierarchy of goals, the specific set of cascading goals. But the nice thing is that there's a systematic relationship between those different goals, and that those different goals address different planning levels. And so I'm quite pleased with the addition of Scrum. But as I said, I'm biased, and I'm sort of suggesting here to use product goals in the sense that I've been using them for a little while. But at least this model works. But maybe one more thing. What I then like to do is I like to not only identify a product goal for sort of one product goal at a time, but I find it useful actually to look at a series and identify a series of product goals. So maybe for the next 6 to 12 months, and then capture them on a roadmap. And it happens that there's a specific format out there that's ideally suited to capture product goals. And these are goal-oriented roadmaps. That's just one specific format, but you don't have to use necessarily this template, which I created a number of years ago. But I could now not only think about the product goal for the MVP, the very first product goal that everybody works towards, but I could also think about then a subsequent product goal and yet another one. And so tell a story about how my product is likely to evolve, or you could say sketch out the journey I want to take my product on, right? So that's something that I like to do. And then I can add some more information here. But again, that'll depending on the roadmap format or the roadmap tool that you use. But so my suggestion is consider if you can identify more than one product goal and capture your product goals on a roadmap, and then use those product goals on your roadmap to essentially determine your product backlog. So for me, the product roadmap is a strategic plan. It contains those product goals. I like to add times or timeframes, certainly for an internal roadmap, and key features, big capabilities, and then keep the product backlog really as a detailed, more tactical plan, and use the product goal in order to focus the product backlog and help determine the right product backlog items. And I've seen so many product backlogs that suffered from being too unfocused and too big. And the product goal can be a very powerful technique in order to create a concise product backlog, where the product backlog items, all product backlog items really help meet this specific goal. And so if somebody comes up with a suggestion for, say, a piece of functionality, you can say, well, will this piece of functionality help us achieve the product goal? If the answer is yes, well, you should probably add it to the product backlog, or at least consider it. If the answer is no, well, it's like, nice idea, but it's at the moment, at present, it's irrelevant. So you should probably decline it in the right way, of course. So yeah, as you can see, I think product goals can be something very, very useful if they're applied in the right way.
Excellent. Can you go one slide, the former slide? I want to ask you something about it. Do you find, I'll give you two questions that pop into my head, okay? One, do you think it important whether we go top down or bottom up in respect to the vision and the product goal, or the sprint goal even? This is the first question. And second, regarding the product goal, which is excellent model, is it iterative or incremental? Or in other words, do we have product goal and then we have it and then we have another one, or build one on top of another, or it isn't irrelevant at all?
Yeah, cool. Lovely. No, those are great questions. Thank you. Maybe to answer your first question, I'll show these sample goals here. So I like to work top down. I like to start with the vision and the user and business goals, and then ask myself, what will be now a good, specific, and eventually at least measurable product goal in order to meet the user and business goals. So the product goal here in this model is a sub goal of the user and business goals, right? It's a step towards achieving the user and business goals. And I do the same thing with the sprint goal. Once I've got a product goal and we say, okay, this is the product goal what we're going for. This is the product goal we're working towards. I ask myself now, what would be a first good step in order to achieve this product goal? And that helps me then identify the sprint goal or the next sprint goal. But as these goals are connected, and there's a feedback cycle, right? And if I find out, well, we failed to meet the first 2 or 3 sprint goals, I think I really have to reflect on the impact on the product goal. And as the person in charge of the product owner, I have to consider adjusting the product goal. Or certainly I have to ask some tough questions about how likely it is that the product goal will be fully met within the time and constraints that we have. And possibly if that product goal now is captured on a roadmap, I then have to consider adjusting and updating the product roadmap. Yeah. And if those goals built on one another, and I think that was the second question, I'd say yes, certainly for new products and young products. So I think it's nice to have these products built on each other, and so that they describe a logical progression of the product. So here, initially, I acquire a user base, I acquire an initial user base, then I want to grow the user base. And then once I've got a critical mass of users, I want to start generating revenue. So those are the in a way, you could say the business related goals. And then the user related goals is, first of all, help me understand my habits, bring some awareness to my eating habits. And then I'm in a position to start improving them. And then I can maybe be even more ambitious and sort of try to adjust my lifestyle and generally get healthier and fitter. So I'm using dual goals here, by the way, instead of an atomic or singular goal. But for me, that's okay, because these dual goals here, the 2 parts, they're so tightly coupled. If I help the users understand their eating habits, then that should help me generate an initial user base. And in order to acquire an initial user base, well, I have to provide some meaningful value for the users within the context that I've set myself. So it's a healthy eating product, and I've got a specific user group with a specific benefit and specific business benefits that constrain here the goal selection. But if you get confused by those dual goals, then maybe just choose one aspect, either the business aspect or the user aspect, whichever works better for you.
Okay, we still have several, like 5-10 minutes, and with your permission, I want to address a different angle. Okay. About new POs, okay? So let's assume that I'm new PO, okay? I'm just got certified, or I'm in my new role in the office. Can you share with the audience what do you think, like, say, top 5 recommendations for a new PO? Or maybe the other side, the challenges in respect to all of the models that you described, which is looks amazing. How to deal with it? I'm a new PO. What would you suggest?
Yeah, no, those are great questions again. Thank you. And as it happens, I think I've got a slide that I can use to answer your questions. So. For me, one of the key challenges that new product owners face is really to acquire the right knowledge and skills and continue to develop their knowledge and skills. And it's a challenge because product management and product ownership are very rich professions or rich disciplines. There's so much to it. And I quite like to break the transferable skills, so those skills that we can use for different products in different industries and different companies, into 3 sets, into tactical skills, strategic, and leadership skills. And so just to give you and then we have a competent Scrum product owner, for me, would have sufficient skills in all 3 areas. And so tactical skills will be knowledge around the product backlog and how to stock the product backlog, how to prioritize the product backlog, how to update the product backlog, use the right solution validation techniques. Should I use a product demo? Should I use a usability test? Should I opt for an early release? maybe at least a basic understanding about software technologies and the technologies that are being used to develop the product, maybe the ability to work with personas. So those would be sample tactical skills, and then strategic skills would be more around well, product strategy and product lifecycle, product discovery and strategy validation, user and market research, product road mapping, business modeling, business forecasting, creating a business case, and then leadership skills are around goal setting and aligning people. It's about being able to collaborate with the stakeholders and development team members. It's about active listening, collaborative decision making, conflict resolution, and the list goes on. So it's quite, as I said, it's quite rich. It's lots of facets to being an effective product owner. And so I always find it helpful, first of all, not to say, oh my God, there's so much I need to know, but so don't be too shocked, but just say like, well, that's the way it is. And it's a journey, and it's not something that happens. I'm not going to become a competent Scrum product owner, generally speaking, overnight or within a few days, usually not even within a few weeks. It'll take me months and it'll take me years, and that's okay. But I think what's important is to have something like a learning plan or learning roadmap in place. And so you can use, if you want to, you can use this little model here and use it to analyze your skills and say, okay, how strong are my tactical skills? Do I know anything about product strategy and product discovery and product road mapping? What about aligning people? What about making decisions together? Those good things. And if you feel, well, maybe I need to learn more about different leadership styles or goal setting techniques, or maybe I need to learn more about product discovery or product strategy, that's great. So you've identified a learning opportunity, a development opportunity. Then take the next step and say, what is the specific thing you'd like to learn about it, or you'd like to achieve? And how you're going to do it. You're going to read a book, you're going to watch videos, you're going to take an e-learning course, you're going to take an in-person class, whatever it is, whatever helps you. And if you're fortunate enough to have a head of product who is your line manager, then hopefully the individual will support you. Some companies have dedicated programs for young product people in terms of, people who just started in the profession, and you would then sometimes work with a more experienced product person for a while, and that can help to learn the job as you do it, and acquire some of those skills along the way. And sometimes I suggest for people who want to enter the profession and become product people, maybe to start as a feature owner, where again, you have the benefit to work with other, maybe more experienced product people, and learn from them. And you don't have the responsibility for an entire product, but your job is more focused. And so it becomes a little bit more manageable. So a feature owner, for instance, typically doesn't need quite as strong leadership skills, and the strategic skills don't quite have to be as deep as for an overall product owner. That's what I find. Yeah. So don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah, I was starting to wonder at the beginning whether one person can do it all, because it sounds like a lot of things to do. And it specifically said that PO is a one person. So I'm debating whether, PO can work in all kind of dimensions, not to mention the inbound, outbound, maybe travel, well, not lately, but speak with customers, as well as being available to the team and maintaining the backlog, refining the backlog, and talk with the management. It's like, I don't know, maybe one of the prerequisites for a PO is to have a split personality. I have no idea.
And that's what some people do. And I mean, that's what the SAFe model suggests. And you have a strategic product person and you have tactical product people. These tactical product people are then called SAFe product owners, and the strategic person or the strategic role is called SAFe product manager. But for me, part of the answer lies in the right division of labor or the right leadership focus. So, we've got the three roles here. And as I'm sure you all know, trust and respect are key for product people, Scrum product owners, to work effectively with the developers and the Scrum Master. But then I think it's important to understand what is the right type of leadership and the main responsibility that Scrum product owners should provide. And I would suggest it's more around vision, strategy, and roadmap, and help with product backlog prioritization, and help with stakeholder alignment and engagement. and allow the developers, the development team, to take leadership of the design, the UX, UI design, and all the technological decisions, and allow people to self-organize. And I'm saying this so explicitly because I find that in practice, many Scrum product owners kind of sort of at least partially also manage the team. And I think if that's what you do, then a challenging job has become just utterly overwhelming. So I think part of the solution, or part of the answer to the question, Danko, that you asked is focus on your job and focus on your core responsibility, because that is challenging enough. Make sure that you have a competent group of developers who work with you, teach them, but also encourage them to take ownership of the product details, the solution, and make sure you have again, Scrum Master who's qualified and available and helps you with a process and method coaching, supports you, supports the development team, but also supports the stakeholders, helps with collaboration, and tackles organizational impediments, acts as an organizational change agent. Because again, otherwise, if you take on the Scrum Master role or part of the Scrum Master role, then it's just going to be extremely difficult to succeed in your role without sacrificing sustainable pace and ultimately sacrificing your well-being. And there are a few shared responsibilities between product owner and team. For me, that's user research. For me, that's also sprint goal selection. I think the Scrum Guide explicitly mentions that, and product backlog refinements also, I think, explicitly mentioned as a shared responsibility in the Scrum Guide. So, use those shared responsibilities as opportunities for collaboration, but also to get support. So many product owners I meet, or quite a few product owners at least I meet, seem to think of themselves as user story writers, but that's not the job of a product owner necessarily. There's nothing wrong with helping to capture user stories, and of course, you should talk to the developers and make sure there's a shared understanding and listen to their ideas and work on the backlog together. But it's not your job to write, perfect, beautiful user stories. I don't think so.
Excellent. Okay, one last question, just because of the time, because for me, I can speak on product ownership. It's a very interesting topic. What do you want to say to the product owners out there in our conference? Anything that you want to recommend, maybe one thing that they need to take or to remember, to ease their pain?
So I think for me, certainly it's helpful to recognize from time to time that the job that we have is a demanding job. It can be rewarding, but there's a lot to it. So don't put yourself under pressure. Don't be too hard on yourself, and allow yourself to make mistakes, and as long as you learn from them. But I think if we don't have the courage to try out new things and make mistakes, we're not going to develop on a personal level, and it'll be hard to innovate our product and progress our products. So yeah, don't try and be the perfect product owner, but recognize that A, nobody's perfect, B, it's a demanding job, there's lots to it, and it just takes time to grow into it. And yeah, allow yourself to develop and grow and have the courage to experiment.
That's the great thing. I may add that the famous quote, "Nobody's perfect. I'm nobody, therefore I'm perfect." Roman PICHLER, thank you very much. Thank you very much for these insights, and I hope to listen to you more in the future. Thank you.
It was lovely. Thank you for having me. I hope it was a little bit helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.